in the West, good afternoon if you're everywhere else in the country. My name is Renee Hartman. I am the NDIS Policy Manager for Disability Employment Australia. I'd like to start this webinar with an acknowledgement to country. Disability Employment Australia acknowledges and pays respect to the past and present traditional custodians and elders of the lands in which we're meeting on today. I come to you from the near Bali lands in the Western Desert area of the Pilbara in Western Australia. I'd like to acknowledge the continuation of culture and education and practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and I extend that respect and acknowledgement to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples on the webinar today. So just want to introduce these lunch and learns. If you haven't been on one of our lunch and learns before, these sessions are delivered by the Centre for Inclusive Employment in partnership with DEA. And the centre supports providers with practical resources, tools and training to help deliver high quality employment services for people with disability and employers. And these lunch and learns will not only be sent as resources to you after the session, they are also on the Centre for Inclusive Employment website. Disability Employment Australia is the peak body for the national peak body for representing disability employment providers. The centre is delivered by a national consortium led by the Centre for Social Impact at Swinburne University of Technology, bringing together research, lived experience and sector expertise. So just a bit of housekeeping now. We have a live captioner with us. Thank you, Mel. And this has been provided by Expressions Australia. We also have our Lunch and Learn webinar guru, Liv from DEA in the background as well, and she'll be supporting additional information in the chat. So she will pop in the chat now how you can access that captioning. This session will be recorded and will be available to view on our online hub along with the slides and transcript. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker today. So in this session, we'll be joined by Robyn Smith from NOFASD Australia. Robyn Smith is the Helpline Services Manager. Robyn has extensive experience supporting individuals and families affected by FASD, drawing from both her professional expertise and personal journey. Her work spans aged care programs, parenting advice and support programs, offender reintegration and transition strategies for school students and youth at risk. Robyn is dedicated to raising awareness and advocating for better supports and outcomes for people and families affected and impacted by FASD. So there will be an opportunity to ask questions and you can use that Q&A feature in Teams, and we'll work with questions at the time, or we'll wait for the end of the session. We'll see how things are going. So I will now hand over to Robyn. Thank you, Robyn.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you very much, and thank you all for joining me here today. I'd also like to say that NOFASD Australia acknowledges and pays respect to past, present and future traditional custodians and elders of this nation and the continuation of cultural, spiritual and educational practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. So today we're going to have a look at what is FASD. Okay, so the mother consumed alcohol, but what happens with that? So how does a person present with FASD? What sort of signs could you see that the person may have FASD? FASD is very much under diagnosis. Also, when I am talking about FASD, I am talking about fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. I'm going to look at some strategies to work with them, some adjustments you can make, and then we'll have a little bit of time for any questions that you might have. coming through there. So what is fetal alcohol spectrum disorder? It is the term we use to describe the physical and or the neurodevelopmental disorder that can result from prenatal alcohol exposure. So FASD is caused by alcohol exposure. We know drugs must cause injury as well, but we are talking with FASD, we are purely talking about alcohol. And alcohol is a poison, it's a teratogen, and it's an agent that is known to cause birth defects and permanent brain injury in the fetus. And it can affect the developing baby at any stage during the pregnancy. This is a video here that I just would like to show you because I think it can explain much better than I can the effect that alcohol has on the brain.
The impact of alcohol on the developing brain affects individuals differently. Based on the pattern of brain growth, we know that the greatest areas of difficulty will typically be in regions of the brain that are further from the brain stem. The impact on specific neurons depends on the timing of alcohol exposure. The brain grows from bottom to top. It begins as a tube, and it is from this tube that brain cells move upward and outward to gradually build the brain. First, glial cells, the support cells of the brain, begin to move upward and outward, branching off from the tube, forming scaffolding that supports the movement of the brain cells, called neurons. The neurons climb up the scaffolding, moving to a specified location, and in some cases, replicating to form more neurons. Some neurons have a short journey, others have a long journey. When alcohol is introduced to the process of brain growth, it may disrupt the cells in many ways, damaging the basic scaffolding, confusing the neurons so they are unsure of where they need to go, and or killing the neurons. Because of the upward and outward progression of the neurons and glial cells, the neurons that may be more vulnerable to the exposure of alcohol are those with further to travel, as there is a greater likelihood of misdirection. Alcohol exposure before birth can cause brain injury, which is permanent. The challenges faced by individuals with FASD are a result of these injuries to their brain. When we understand this, we can focus on supporting individuals to develop personal and social capability and the knowledge and skills required for learning and communication.
Yeah. That is very important to keep in mind too when you're working with someone with FASD. It's also very important to keep in mind that sometimes there's 9 domains of the brain that are looked at, and sometimes they can be different. So strategies that may work for one person that has FASD may not work for another person that has FASD. But generally there's a lot of common traits, and so that's what I'm going to be discussing here today with you today. So in the diagnostic process, there are 3 sentinel facial features. They are a smooth philtrum, which is the little groove at the top of your lip there, and a thin top upper lip, and also what they call papial facies, which is the distance you can see from the arrow on A to B. So it's a smaller distance in between there. Each culture has a different chart, but they are alcohol's the only substance that causes these 3 sentinel facial features, but they are only formed on 4 days of the pregnancy, day 17 to day 20. So if there's no alcohol in that period of time, there are no facial features. That actually means someone that's living with FASD looks like everyone else because they have a brain impairment which can't be seen. So this is where it's very hard. Sometimes, when you can see a person has a disability, like if someone's in a wheelchair, you wouldn't ask them to get up and walk around the room. But if someone has FASD, people often expect them to understand what they're saying and to answer straight away. So the 9 domains that are looked at are communication, which includes how a person understands what's said to them, how they express themselves using words and sentences. The use of grammar, sometimes their vocabulary and sentence structure doesn't quite make sense. And sometimes being understand what words mean and relationships. There's also motor skills there. So the motor skills, just being able to complete written forms, may appear slow or clumsy or uncoordinated when completing tasks. There's also the intellectual ability, which covers reasoning, so understanding information and making sense of it, problem solving, figuring out solutions, abstract thinking, understanding ideas that aren't concrete, working memory, holding information in mind, slow processing speeds as well. So then we look at attention. So it is difficulty, the person often has difficulty in concentrating and focusing. So they have difficulty staying focused on tasks or instructions, may appear restless or struggle to sit still, may also act impulsively without thinking. There is also memory. So memory, difficulty remembering rules, routines or instructions. And sometimes too many instructions at one period means that one time they won't remember there. So difficulty in remembering is very much there as well. We have the executive functioning, which is our ability to plan, and they'll have trouble with planning, problem solving, and organisation. Also, trouble in completing tasks, has understanding what is wrong and the consequences of actions. So, and difficulty controlling emotions. Then we have the affective regulation as well. So, the emotional and behavioural regulation, and so that is emotional responses may be intense or fluctuate quickly, may struggle to manage stress, frustration or conflict. There is also the literacy and numeracy skills. So reading and writing skills can be sometimes not very good. And then we have the adaptive behaviour and social functioning. So they may have a lack of empathy, social judgment, and communication skills. So it is permanent damage, unlike stroke, that sometimes if a person has a stroke, they are able to learn again because those the brain neuropathways are there to start with, and they're able to relearn. But that does not mean that someone with FASD cannot learn. The people with FASD are able to learn, but they learn differently. Quite often they're very hands-on. They learn by looking and doing. They can quite often have amazing skills in being able to things like music, pick up and play a tune just purely by ear. So they can have some exceptional skills as well. One of a common thing with someone that an individual that has FASD is developmental delay. We actually call it dysmaturity. So what that means is a person that you may be working with, they may be 20 years of age, but socially, emotionally, and mentally, they may be at much younger age, and sometimes quite often half their chronological age. So this 20-year-old that you might be working with might be socially and emotionally that of an 8 or 10-year-old person. So dysmaturity is very complex. So you may have an actual 18-year-old who's got through school. They have extremely good expressive language. People with FASD want to fit in and they want to be liked, and so their expressive language is usually very, very good. So this 18-year-old possibly gone for a job interview, was able to talk the talk absolutely fine, got the job, has the reading ability of a 16-year-old, so may be able to get away with that okay. Living skills of an 11-year-old, so may come into work not showered, hair not done. Money and time concepts, they're very difficult because they're actually abstract concepts. So time and money, they might go to lunch at 12 o'clock, not come back till about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And after their first pay, they may go down to JB Hi-Fi, blow the whole lot on games. So have nothing to live on again for the rest of the fortnight. The social skills of a 7-year-old, so maybe very, very immature when they're talking to other work colleagues, maybe saying dumb jokes, very, very strange. And then reading and comprehend emotional maturity, that of possibly a 6-year-old, which they get very, very upset if the boss says that, oh my goodness, that work is not good. They'll say, get very upset and angry over it. So how, with memory distortions as well and perception, how I like to describe it, I am very old school. If say you ask me a question and you ask me where Coles is, and I'll go up into this little room in my brain and I'll have neatly stacked filing cabinets, all stacked marked A to Z. And I go into C, and then in C I go into D and bring out directions. So I'm able to tell you straight away where Coles is. But if you go into that room of a person that has FASD, you will find filing cabinets upended everywhere, files scattered all over the place. So it might be a case of you ask them where Coles is, they have to actually search through all those files to find that information. So sometimes we do need to give them longer time to actually think about this and to be able to come up with the question, with the answer. So some adjustments you can make for this. So what you might see is lateness or missed shifts. It looks like the individual is disinterested. They don't care. Instead of what's really happening, this person has a brain injury. Forgetfulness can be lacking motivation. Instead of, it can be someone who is struggling to do the best they can. In completing tasks or messy work, it may look like they don't desire employment, but really that is someone who really wants to succeed. Mistakes in task completion may look like they're lazy, but this is someone who often cares very much about doing very well. Reckless or dangerous behaviour. They can sometimes look like they're just careless, but this person has difficulty making sense of how our brains work. So adjustments you can make and things you can do when a person comes into you, when an adult comes into you and they're looking for a job, you might need to delve in a little bit there to find out what they do in their spare time. Sometimes it'll be difficult for them to explain what they like and what they don't like. You can find out by asking operative questions. You know, who do you hang out with? What do you do? If this person is quite a loner, they might be much better off getting a job in a factory or somewhere where they don't have to interact too much with other people. If they're very social, they might be better in a retail job. Do they like to play sport? What sort of do they like to work with animals? If they play an instrument? And just ask them as well, what sort of job would they like? Sometimes when they answer that, it might be like they might like to be a rocket scientist, but you know that's not going to happen. So this is where getting a little bit of a background on them to start with, and then talking about things that might interest them, to give them and to give you a little bit of an idea of how to work with them. An example of FASD in the workplace was Jacob. He is 23. He's had 5 jobs since leaving school. but has not lasted in one more than a week. What's happened there usually, he can't remember what to do, he doesn't turn up on time, it might start out all right, but he's been in and out of employment. Then he went for a job at Domino's Pizza Hut, and he was there for 5 months and seemed to be doing really, really well. Actually, he realistically was doing more than really well. After 5 months, after about 4.5 months, the management looked and sort of saw how good he was doing. He was very keen, and they decided to promote him. And so, and put him on the phones. But why Jacob did so well in Domino's, because he was putting pizza tops on the pizzas. So there were stations there. So the Mediterranean pizza, he had all these ingredients there, right there to show what to put on the pizza. The Hawaiian pizza, each station had all the ingredients there. So he knew what to put on those. But when he got promoted and went on to the phone orders, he got every one of them mixed up. It was just a nightmare in every way because he was just mixing it up all the time. And so, but what happened, instead of going to management, he was so upset with himself and so embarrassed, he just left. Instead of going up to them and saying, look, this is not working out for me, could you put me back onto the to the pizza toppings? So it's about having that understanding in sometimes shifts in jobs is somewhere that the routine and structure, which we'll have a look at in a minute, of some of the things that people with FASD work really well in. So another example is Emma is 18 years old and she has FASD and has just got her first job in the local cafe. What happened there, before she went to work, she was prepped. Mum and grandma and friends were all telling her, okay, now the main thing you've got to do when you get a job is listen to the boss, listen to the manager, and he'll tell you what to do. You just do what he says. So that was fine. After a couple of days at work there, she had been at work there. She was doing quite good. She was doing a good job. And the manager came in and, of course, it was explained to her to begin with on the first day that the main task was to serve the customers. The customers must come first. So the manager came in and it was quiet. There was no customers there. And so he said, oh, can you fill up the salt and pepper shakers here behind the counter? Make sure they're all full. So that was fine. So that she started to do that. But then customers started coming up to the counter. She totally ignored the customers. And it wasn't until the manager came up and got quite upset with her was, why aren't you serving the customers? It was because he had told her to fill the salt and pepper shakers. So it's very, very concrete, doing exactly what's asked of. So he should have actually reminded her that you only do that if there's no customers, because she'd forgotten what she had been told a couple of days prior to that. So the impact on the individual is difficulty in remembering tasks. We have speech and language disorders that can contribute. Difficulty with reading comprehension. Quite often might be able to read it out to you, but the comprehension of what they're actually saying, what they are reading, does not happen. And as we said, often there can be literacy, numeracy, and abstract thinking difficulties. Also impulsivity, and this is Ricky, and he's just giving a little bit of a idea, like he'd love to drive, but with his impulsiveness, he knows that he can't.
I want to drive, but I can't because it's dangerous for me, because what happens is if I drive, I might want to go my speed limit, and that would be not appropriate for the rest of the people, and I will get in trouble with that. I was driving along in a car with my mom, and I happened to see a stray dog. I wanted to get lucky. My mom caught me by the string of my thing because I opened the door, swing the door open, and I was about to go in the 4 lanes of the freeway, and my mom grabbed me just barely by the tip of her hands, or else I would have maybe got hit or something. That's the type of thing that I like to do. I don't think, I just do it. I don't want to be dragged going with places with my mom. I want to be more independent, staying home. But it's not a seizure. It's not a seizure tick. It's not something I decide to do it. It just random comes. Don't know when it's gonna me to go out and do something instructive with somebody. I just do it.
Mm. And I think this is one thing to keep in mind here as well too, or two things to keep in mind actually. One is the dysmaturity. So socially and emotionally, as I was saying, a 20-year-old might be that socially and emotionally that of a 10-year-old. So it might be by the time that person gets to 30 that they are mature enough to possibly get a driver's license. So this is something that we need to keep in mind very much there. And also that FASD is a spectrum disorder. So that means that there is no two people the same. So although Ricky mightn't be able to have his driver's license, other people that have FASD will be able to. I love this analogy, and it really makes so much sense to me. It comes from a lady that lives with FASD, and she said that living with FASD is like living every day with a lamp with a short in it. So some days it's bright and shining. On those days, you can take in information, you can learn on those days, you can remember, and you can do things on those days. The next day, it might be flickering, so you might be able to do it in the morning, but not in the afternoon. Then there's possibly days where absolutely nothing is going to happen. And they are days where they find it so hard to remember, keep making mistakes, those sort of things. I really recommend later you will be sent out some information, and there will be up on the website, I believe, too. There's a link there, and I strongly recommend that you actually look at that. And it's Miles Hendrick, and he is talking about what it is like to live with FASD. And he talks about it. He's an adult with FASD, and I really encourage you to watch that. So there are 8 essentials to success here we have, and I think that is structure. Routine and structure is so important for people who are living with FASD. It's the glue that holds everything together, and they know what's happening. There is predictability in routine and structure. So this is why often individuals with FASD very, very good at doing things like factory work or doing jobs where there is repetitive tasks to be done. But also when you're working with them, you've got to keep things concrete. So don't use words with double meanings or idioms, because if you say, oh, you can do that, that's a piece of cake, they're just looking around for their piece of cake. That's what they're looking for. So remember to also keep things very, very simple. Keep it short, keep it sweet, and try not give too many instructions at a time. But the one thing with instructions, and I can't stress enough, is visuals are so good because they can actually see what to do then. So we need to use consistent, familiar and predictable language and communication and responses. It might be, see if they use the term toilet at home, and you might go to them and say to them in the workplace, they're told, oh, the bathroom's down there, down the passageway and to your right. They don't have a clue what a bathroom is, cannot quite often move language. Everything has got to be consistent with them. And you need to be specific and say exactly what you mean. There was a case of like if you ask them to go, oh, can you go and empty the rubbish bin in the kitchen, please? That is quite likely what they might do, is they'll just go into the kitchen, grab the rubbish bin and upend it on the floor. Because literally that's what you ask them to do, is go and empty the rubbish bin in the kitchen. So you need more directions, is can you go and get the rubbish out of the bin in the kitchen and take it to the bin outside, please? So you need to be very, very specific with what you say. Repetition. reteaching is needed frequently. This comes in like to teach them, it must be over and over and over again. Eventually they do learn, but also there is a memory when they're learning something new. It can take quite a while, and so there is that repetition, and there's the memory issue in there as well, that they might have forgotten what they've been told. And supervision, as much as possible, have as much supervision just to make sure things are on track. So visuals, as I say, visuals are extremely important. They are extremely good. So having visuals like this, especially with sandwiches, taking photos, going in there, it's like what to do there. Now, I can't stress enough how this second one on how to clean a floor is, because something like, I know when I was managing a shop when I was many, many years ago, I had a young 17-year-old boy come in and he was neurotypical. And I asked him to wash the floor and he didn't have a clue how to do it because his mum had always done it at home. So that's fine. So we do know that all tasks need to be taught. But visuals for someone that has FASD is excellent because you can tell them what to do, but they will forget it by the next day when they have to wash the floor. But if you gave them this instruction of how to clean a floor, that would be an absolute disaster. So this is how not to do instructions. They must be step by step, but they must be very specific. And if you have a look what it says there on first step, fill bucket with water and floor cleaner. So they'll just keep filling and put the whole bottle of floor cleaner into the bucket, because that's what the instruction says to do. So you could imagine the mess that you would have with the overflowing bucket of water and the suds going all over the place. So it would be an absolute disaster. So we must be very, very careful and very, very specific in cutting down tasks to make sure that they are very, very one step at a time. The other one we have here is support strategies also with visuals with there. And as I say, time is very much a issue with individuals that have FASD. So we do have timers that go there. So quite often clocks are not so good. So either backward timers, sand timers are really, really good. They're able to show there, they can see, because time is an abstract thing there. So it is very, very very good for them to be able to see time disappearing because they can see it there. So I do have any questions. I'd also like to actually, before I go into any questions, I would like to point out that we do also have, and there will be links to that on our website, a Foundations in FASD course, which is 7 modules. It's online and it is free. It's a certificate course that you could do afterwards. But this actually does gives you an in-depth look, because I'm afraid in a short period of time here, and I'm very keen, because I should imagine there's a lot of questions that people might like to ask. So I would really strongly suggest that you'll recommend that you do the Foundations in FASD course. We also have on our website a lot of information that is very useful, and pages there on working with adults with FASD. So I would recommend that you have a look at that. So I would like to open up and see if there's any questions that anyone has.
Thanks, Robyn. That was so informative. I'm going to jump the queue, if you don't mind, everyone,
Certainly.
and ask some questions. So, look, I'm just trying to visualize it from supporting someone on the ground. And I just wonder, do you have examples where that support can taper off, or whether, can you support someone in an IEA program, or do they really need an NDIS type of one-on-one mentor? where can someone from an IEA provider get additional support to work out how much support to wrap around? And I guess the other part of my question, sorry, is that, do employment specialists need some guidance from an OT or something to provide them with the background of this specific person's barriers to their FASD diagnosis? Do you know what I'm trying to say there?
I do exactly, and very good questions. And yes, the one thing is, and this is one thing that is very hard, is with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. There's no two people the same. So what will happen there when someone presents with a diagnosis of FASD, it will be a case of, okay, that this person has FASD, but it depends on where those brain impairments are. So some people will be able to hold down jobs. They'll be able to. Things are just a little bit more difficult for them. So and people with FASD are really, really good workers. Once they get to know, once they get over that, they are one of your best workers because they love what they do and they can do it there. But it depends on the person. So I can't say every person needs. There will be some that need more support, that need one-on-one, but not everyone that has FASD needs one-on-one. With their diagnosis, it is a very good and an important too, but sorry, it's very important with them there too that the diagnosis is understood, and as you said there, with if they have their diagnosis with an OT report, that can also give you a little bit of steps to go there. But I think the main thing is for the to work with the employer, for you to actually set up in meetings with the employer, work out with this person to start with where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are. You can get some of that from the diagnosis. You can also get some of that from the person themselves. So you can ask them where their strengths are, what they like doing. You can also go through and make sure that they have visuals in the workplace. So we can do some of those visuals really well, and even go to the employer and say, look, do you mind if we take some photos? And we can do there, so to have photos that they can put up there and instructions there. So the thing is, visuals don't disappear, words disappear. So this is where it's very important that that the visuals go there. And I think to start with, it's about working with this, finding out the strengths of this person that has FASD, finding out what sort of employment you think that they will like, because often they don't know themselves. But as I say, if they're a loner, if they're social, if they're not social, that can blend into what they're doing as well a little bit there. So I hope that's answered it properly.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Robyn. We do have a question in the Q&A section from Rod. What are some of the common assumptions people make of someone living with FASD in the employment context?
They understand. They understand exactly what you're saying, because that is so common for someone, and you will say, do you understand? And they say yes. And that is one of the hardest things. Very good question, Rod, because that is one of the hardest things to overcome, because you ask them and they say, yes, I do understand, because they're actually wanting to please you and they're wanting to say that they do, but they actually don't understand. So then sometimes it's about asking them, oh, well, that's great. Can you show me what that means? And then you get the understanding then, okay, maybe you don't actually know. And make sure that you say to them that that's okay. Look, I did wonder, we just need to do it this way or do it that way, and give them, and then sometimes give them options of what they, would you like to do it this way or that way? But that is one of the most common things, is people think that they understand, and also that the processing time. Sometimes you need to give that person a little bit more time just to process what you're saying. So They have learned over the time, though, that everyone wants an answer straight away. Because we say quite often there are 10-second people in a 1-second world. You ask a question, you want it straight away. You cannot believe how long 10 seconds is. It is just like, that's 10 seconds. Now, that's a long time. So if I've just asked you a question at the beginning of that, you're saying, oh, did you hear me, Robyn? I asked you a question. Where's Coles? You know, it's that sort of thing. So it is. You need to give them time. They're not being rude, but this is where sometimes they will answer with something they don't know straight away because they know you expect an answer. So it might be if you ask them something, they'll just say, "I don't know." Or no, I don't know. So that will be their go-to answer because they haven't had time to actually process what's happening there. So thank you. I hope
thanks, Robyn.
And I see
I've
Melanie.
just got a comment.
Yeah, sure.
Melanie or Melissa, do you have something from... Oh, Melanie, yes, sorry, I'll go back to Q&A. I was in chat, sorry. So Melanie asked, where would we send them to get external supports outside of work if they have no DSP or NDIS and limited family support? Yeah, common.
That unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but this is where they slip through so many cracks. And unfortunately, there is not the support there. It is so unfortunate too that many people with FASD don't get a diagnosis. They slip through all the cracks during schooling and growing up. And then once you turn 18, unfortunately, it's very, very expensive to get a FASD diagnosis, even prior to that. A lot of these individuals with FASD do come in out-of-home care as well. And it is very, very sad that they do not get that diagnosis when they're in out-of-home care because that is actually what gives them the support, gives them the understanding. So if they do not have, and I take it, Melanie, you think this is if they have FASD, they would be able to get NDIS support. I am assuming this is if they are undiagnosed that you're saying there, that unfortunately there is not that support there.
There also is that notion with the NDIS that sometimes, depending on the functional capacity, that some people just don't make access even with the diagnosis. So there's certainly those challenges as well.
Challenges, yeah. There is sometimes, and I must admit, I'm sorry, Renee, I'll just say there too, and I will put that in there because depending on what is quite sad is with the NDIS sometimes too, the planning coordinator or the support coordinator that is working with them quite often doesn't understand FASD as well, and so does not give access to what the person actually needs. So we do, as an organisation, we actually support and we can advocate for someone that has been knocked back. If the impairments, I have seen what you couldn't imagine, incredible impairments that they've been knocked back from, and but we can advocate for that. And sometimes that's purely the misunderstanding of the person who is in control of that yes or no to whether they get access or not. So there is another way of that too.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's excellent to know that you're an advocacy group there that people can go to. Melanie was just coming back to you there where it's been on the ESAT, which is the assessment that an Inclusive Employment Australia employment consultant will get. However, it's not recognised outside of that. So that's where they haven't got DSP or they haven't got NDIS or other supports. Right. So that can be challenging for, when you're working with someone one-on-one where this is the information you've been given to work with. But, it's not recognised. So I just want to quickly go to some comments outside of the Q&A before we close. So Melissa says, thank you. I have custody of my 9-year-old grandson who has an official diagnosis, and you have summed up perfectly. No 2 minutes are the same. What works today will not work tomorrow. And don't forget, no emotional stability. So real life story there. Paul, I find organisational structures are unhelpful for clients with FASD. My director called it quits with a client when my client lost his 3rd job with me. It all was okay with him until I started fading in my employment support, until I started fading in my employment support. Our service was for people who could be independent, unfortunately. I wish I was able to help him. And this is difficult for people who work in this system. When the system creates more boundaries than the barriers that our participants face, it's really soul destroying sometimes.
It is. I agree.
Yeah. Madeline says, how significant is sleep disturbances in people with FASD from a behaviour support perspective? How can we best support this, and what strategies are most effective?
Yeah, sleep is a very big issue there, and that unfortunately that's something that needs to go through like a medical practitioner to actually do with that. Sometimes things like melatonin can help, but they need to be careful. But sleep and eating disorders as well, and I say eating disorders, not necessarily just disorders, but things like forgetting to eat, not being able to sleep properly. Those sort of things do play a very big part. And when you're working with a person, you're actually not sure what's happened. Have they had lunch, or are they really hungry? Is that why they're flagging? Because they actually don't realise that themselves. And these sort of things can make a very, very big difference, even into whether it's hot or cold. Sometimes they just don't feel it, or they won't see it. So it is about all of this emotional regulation and the environmental around them that makes all the difference on day to day as well. And this is where it is a tricky one and very hard for you, because you don't know their personal life and how they've slept. But sometimes asking some of those questions too can be, especially if you notice they come in and it's freezing cold and they don't have a jumper, they might have just forgotten to take it. So they are actually cold. It's not that they don't feel it, but they are actually cold. But they just haven't got, they didn't think to bring their jumper. Or they might be it might be a stinking hot day and they've got a sweatshirt on. So those sort of things, reminding them, gee, you probably feel more comfortable if you took that sweatshirt off.
Yeah, thanks, Robyn. Sorry, we could go on for another half an hour, but we can't, folks. We really do need to acknowledge our time. And our time is up. Robyn, that was excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just want to, guys, I'm going to put a short poll in the chat. It's only 2 questions. It'll literally take 5 seconds. It's very important for our lunch and learns if you could just fill those in, please. Additionally, I would like to remind you that the resources will be made available to you, and to log your CPD points, please, so you can get your professional development points up. The next session will be held on the 9th of September and will focus on psychological safe leadership. So thanks, everyone. Thanks to Robyn so much, and have a great fortnight, and keep up the great work that you all do.